Daryl Morey has been one of the more controversial figures in all of sports as far as front office personnel and general managers go. With a forward-facing presence in the media, a unique thought process that embraces analytics and sometimes is accused as the lack of personal feel, Morey has made his enemies over the years, and Marcus Morris sure seems to be one of them. The former Sixers forward spoke up on a podcast with Kevin O'Connor, taking some pretty direct jabs at Daryl Morey directly in a way that we've seen Daryl Morey get his blows, get his jabs, get his critiques around the NBA. This one went right for the throat. This was a knockout punch by Marcus Morris. I'm going to dive into exactly what he said there, what Morey specifically referenced to kind of set him up on this, and kind of the big picture conversation on why I think Marcus Morris' feelings might be a little bit hurt in this entire situation or behind the scenes, but why I still think there is weight to what he's saying and really the optics of this from an overall NBA perspective. And this is not the first time an NBA player has spoken out against Daryl Morey. Let's not forget Patrick Beverley. Let's not forget James Harden, who probably had one of the most monumental speaking out against a front office personnel. We cannot forget him going all the way to China to speak to a kids camp about how Daryl Morey is a liar and he will never play for an organization that he represents ever again. I repeat, Daryl Morey is a liar. We all remember how that one went down. So I'm going to dive into it all in this video, but before I get to it, take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, and then we'll dive right back into things. We are kicking off a March Madness pool for the channel by partnering with the Hottakes app and other digest channels for this event. It is completely free to sign up. Just download the Hottakes app, click the March Madness banner at the top, and under groups, select the Digest Media pool. This is really exciting as there's over $25,000 in prizes to be won, and since there's a much smaller pool of people participating, there's a real chance in winning big compared to other bracket challenges out there. Check out the link below or scan the QR code to download the app, and make sure to use promo code DIGEST in all caps to get exclusive perks when signing on. Again, this is completely free, and if you have any issues whatsoever, just use the email down below. We are excited to see you in this March Madness pool. Now let's get into the topic of the video today. Now, I've already filled out my bracket. I'm in that contest, so make sure you guys are getting involved as well. Now, the topic of today to get into, first I want to start off with kind of the screenshot that Marcus Morris was on the Kevin O'Connor podcast here, speaking a little bit, and shout out to Marcus. He's a guy who's from Philly, just about as Philly of an athlete as you can come, and I can speak to firsthand. I've had a chance to talk to him on a couple different occasions that he's very active at the Rump Classic, the City of Brotherly Love League, a lot of kind of inner city like leagues and pro-ams and things like that are run. He gives back to the community a ton. He's a good human being, a guy that I've seen do far more for Philadelphia from a basketball perspective than anyone else I can really think of here, particularly from a professional athlete standpoint. So shout out to him, a guy who never makes people feel too small, a guy who is willing to speak to you regardless of who you are. And I can speak even when I was, not that I'm anybody massive right now, but when I was a nobody, a scared, just starting out in media person, he always was really cool to me, and I will not forget that. So I do have like a respect for Marcus Morris. There is no doubt about it. And he is kind of making his way into the media scene as well. So he joined the Kevin O'Connor podcast and spoke a little bit about he was asked, and to Kevin's credit here, this was not set up as an alley-oop to go dunk on Daryl Morey. The question was pretty vague, and it had to do with, obviously, the AI conversation. Actually, I'll pull up that exact quote here from Daryl Morey, as this has kind of been what has been making its waves. So Daryl Morey admitted to using AI in his decision-making process with the 76ers and in general. And the exact quote that went out on the Pablo Torre podcast, this article writes, "The Philadelphia 76ers season has been an unmitigated disaster, and the prevailing belief has been that unrelenting injuries have been the primary factor for the team's 22-43 record. But perhaps artificial intelligence can be scapegoated as well. Quote, we absolutely use models as a vote in any decision," Sixers President Daryl Morey told journalist Pablo Torre when asked if he utilized large language models in basketball moves. How much of that decision depends on how much of the assumptions behind those modules change and the past success rate. So if you have a highly successful model for picking draft picks and the NBA hasn't changed the rules yet, then the models get a lot of weight in those decisions. It turns out LLM models do fairly well at prediction. They still are not beating human super forecasters. They do add signal over just scouts and things like that, so we'll treat them as one scout. Now, I think this quote has been a little bit blown out of proportion to this point. I think teams in that spot, or I guess organization as a whole, they're constantly looking for whatever edge they can get, and I would be shocked to find if Daryl Morey is the only guy making these decisions. Now, with that being said, if he's making decisions by whatever AI says, and that's just not a part of it, that is absolutely fundamentally wrong. That cannot be okay there. But using it as a tool, I can live with, and we're not going to ever get the peek behind the curtains on how deep that goes. Now, the topic of this real video is what Morris said about this specific. So to give his full quote here, which again is pretty pointed, I will just lay it out here. That Morris says, quote, and again, this was brought up, asked about the AI conversation. And Morris replies, "This is the first time I've ever said this. I don't trust Daryl Morey. I just don't trust him. I think he's thinking too far ahead of the way basketball needs to be played. He's trying to do a whole new team. He's trying to bring guys in. He's flipping them in and out, in and out, in and out. Does he even understand the dynamic of being in Philadelphia? What guys you need to play in Philadelphia? Like, I understand how the team needs to gel first before you start talking about AI. What does AI do? Like, I understand the effects it can have on other sports, maybe the offense, the number, and things like that. But like telling you what guys you should be chosen or what guy fits with what you're trying to do, what does he want? Like, he hasn't won in a long time, right? You tell my guy James Harden, that you're gonna do something for him, a guy that you brought from all these teams, and then you don't know. Like, did AI tell him not to pay James Harden this amount of money? Did AI tell him to go get Paul George, hire Nick Nurse? Did AI tell you to get all those guys, get that guy from Miami, Caleb Martin, because he played well in that Boston series? He can't shoot the ball. You got three dominant guys that need the ball in their hands. Why is the first guy that you go get? Why is that the first guy you go get, right? Like, how do you come up with picking a team? Why do you want to start a brand new team and try to win a championship? I haven't seen any team that has 10 new guys be really good the following year. I don't even know if any team has ever done that. Like, I'm just not a fan of like how he goes about choosing players and like flipping players in and out. It's kind of like he's trying to like outsmart the game too much, right? So pretty, again, pointed comments from Marcus Morris, and I think a lot of this holds weight. And frankly, he went on for like a full 5-minute rant. It did feel personal to me, and even went into the personal side of things of how he was playing in Philadelphia for a little bit and playing well. And he's right. He absolutely was playing well for the Sixers team during this stretch. He came over to Philadelphia as a part of that initial James Harden trade, which I'm sure is tied into this entire conversation. And ultimately, he was shipped out as a part of the trade that brought in Buddy Hield. And he made a couple comments about that, how Daryl traded him away for literal scraps, for food scraps there is what he said about that conversation, and kind of went on. Now, I think we all sort of knew the situation, or at least myself viewing it from afar, that based on, and this is just the unfortunate state of the NBA, a player like Marcus Morris sometimes is more valuable for the money that is attached for him than him as a specific player. Was he a fine, functional, high-level NBA player? High level is probably a little strong. He was a fine player, a useful player for stretches there. But what was really motivating is that you could move that contract and intend to improve your team. Now, to Marcus's point here, it is a fair critique that Daryl Morey tinkers a little too much. Now, in general, like, I appreciate that I think you should always be trying to get better, but there are moves that he made that I simply haven't seen the logic in. And this is one that doesn't hold any weight, but another example that Marcus Morris used in this rant, like trading Patrick Beverley. Like, that didn't make sense to me at the time. Getting rid of Jaden Springer. Like, just why? Just, like, what is the purpose of these? And Daryl will always kind of push back on the slant of things of, you got to look at it as his complete picture. That if that individual trade doesn't make sense, well, look at it with all the others. That the way the draft picks shape out, recouping assets, all these kind of phrases you can swing his way. But I do think Marcus has a point here. I'm not going to say that I've lost faith in Daryl Morey. I've been a Daryl Morey guy from start to finish. I don't have a crazy relationship with him. I've met him once in person, have spoken to him. He follows me on Twitter. I've done interviews with him, all these kind of things. I like the guy in general. I respect that he is a little bit more forward-facing than any other GM that I've seen. But what comes with that is people wait around and are ready to take their licks when you're down, man. And that's kind of what I see is going on with Daryl Morey right here. That we all know the effects of this season, but for the people that have disagreed with the way Daryl Morey goes about his business, you now have your shot to take at him right now. That you are kicking the man while he's down, and people are going to jump on those opportunities. So I don't think this is going to be the last time we see some outward critique of Daryl Morey. I am kind of shocked like how pointed this was from Marcus Morris directly, but I do think that he speaks that he's not the only one that has this full opinion. We've seen James Harden hint at this. We've seen Patrick Beverley hint at this. I'm curious if there are more guys that come out and continue to take these kind of shots. Now, ultimately, I still think that the bottom line is Daryl Morey is still running this franchise, and it will be interesting to see if that is the true case of the conclusion this offseason. I still kind of lean toward expecting that to be the case here. That I think, in fairness to Daryl, a lot of the decisions that he's made, I would have done the exact same thing in his shoes. Has Paul George not worked out? No, it hasn't. But I still think that was the right move there. Would they have been better off, signing high-level role players? Like, take a look around at that plan. Take a peek down in Orlando, who are the worst three-point shooting team in decades, and paid Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to be the guy to change that this year. He's having one of the worst three-point shooting careers of shooting seasons of his career. So sometimes the right decision just does not work out, and I think the Sixers are dealing with a little bit of that this year. They obviously got to adjust, got to recalculate everything, and I would not use AI for these kind of conversations here, but I do think that they're being held down to the fire in a way that is not entirely fair to everyone involved here, but that's what comes with the territory when you are a general manager. Now, just for the thought process here, out of curiosity, I did type into Grok or however you say it, whatever's the Twitter version of AI, which, I'm not a big AI guy. I'll be front and center. Don't use it pretty much at all, and honestly don't really love it. That I'm a big fan of, let humans be humans here. But I did use it out of curiosity to see how similar does this sound to Daryl Morey. And unfortunately, I was kind of stunned here. So I tweeted out here, just out of curiosity, I asked Grok if he would have signed Paul George to a max contract if he was running the Sixers. The answer: I'd have signed him. The Sixers were at a crossroads, years of playoff flops, Embiid's prime ticking, and a fan base ready to riot. George was the best available swing, and in the NBA, you don't win titles without stacking talent, even if it's pricey and imperfect. His fit with Embiid is a floor spacing wing who can create, and Maxey, a rising guard out there who thrives off ball, made too much sense on paper. Depth's nice, but stars win in May and June, and George gives you a shot at the elusive Eastern Conference Finals that they haven't made since 2001. The age and injury risk gnaw at me, and I'd lose sleep over it on the back half of that contract, but sitting on your hands wasn't an option. You sign him, cross your fingers his knees hold up, and hope Daryl Morey's gambit pays off with a parade down Broad Street. It's a bet on now, not on later, and for Philly, now's all that matters. Unfortunately, that sounds a lot like Daryl Morey to me. Now, again, my full position on this, I don't mind if he uses AI as a tool. If that is something that he, one of the options that he is. In the same way that you should ask your scouts their thought, or ask your finance guy the cap implications. Ask all these conversations. You should be talking to everybody. Use as many resources as possible. But if that is the only resource that is used, if there's a computer running the Sixers franchise right now, then that is a problem. So to Marcus Morris directly, I give you a lot of respect for speaking your mind here. He is a guy that is always cool with me. It should always be cool with everyone in the Philadelphia region based on everything that he's done for the city. And again, he played very well for the Sixers during the stretch that he was here. So shout out to Marcus, man. Pretty stunned to see kind of those quotes come across, and I do encourage you guys to watch that full video because there was some pointed jabs. The way that he spoke, I felt it more than myself just reading it just there. So do encourage you guys to check that out. But I want to hear from you guys. Where are you guys at on the Daryl Morey conversation here? It does feel like we're at the low point of the Morey era in Philadelphia, and for obvious reasons, that the results speak for themselves, and the Sixers team is at exactly where they're at because of the decisions that he made and the effects that have come in the process. So ultimately, it is still a lot of dragging our feet and waiting for the rest of this regular season to end. There will be some larger, bigger picture conversations to be had this offseason, but we got to get through the rest of the regular season grind, and not nearly as much excitement as we expect to be the case at this current form. But drop those thoughts below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and I'll be back talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.